Tighten up those laces, straighten that headband. It is time for CHGO Marathon, a podcast about the culture, community, and challenge surrounding one of the world's greatest races. CHGO Marathon is brought to you by Goose Island, the official beer of CHGO Sports, and the beer you'll be drinking when you cross that finish line on October 8th. If you're coming to Chicago for the race, check out one of their Chicago locations at gooseisland.com/locations. What's up, everyone? I'm Kevin Kaduk, head of content at CHGO, and a first-time entrant in the Chicago Marathon. We've been having a great string of guests lately, and today we are joined by former Chicago Cubs pitcher Ryan Dempster. He just finished the Boston Marathon in 2023, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to bring him in to talk about, running a marathon. Our great friend Lorraine Fisher connected us, and now you're here, Ryan. What's going on, Ryan?
Hey, not much. I'm just still recovering from that April marathon. Just to, give you a little bit of motivation. But thanks for having me on. I'm glad.
Yeah, so I thought it was a great fit because, you're in your mid-40s. I'm in my mid-40s. You just did your first marathon. I'm about to do my first marathon, so I thought you could give me some advice. When I was doing research for this, though, I think you appeared on MLB Network. Of course, you work for MLB Network and Marquee Network. And you said I think after it happened, you were never running one again. A couple months later, is that true?
What's funny? I think it's like having a kid. Like when you have a child, you're like, I'm never doing that again. But then you get further away from it, and your wife forgets about labor, and you forget about the sleepless nights, and you start to really just enjoy what it gave you. And so I'm not saying never, because as time has gone, I've healed my wounds, and I can stand up straight again. And I just was like, in the moment, that's how I felt. I was that sore. I was that uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It hit me that hard afterwards. Mind you, I was doing a live television show about an hour and 20 minutes after I finished the marathon. So recovery was not at its optimal point then.
Yeah. I remember they showed you kind of stumbling towards the dugout, and you could barely get down the dugout stairs to do your live hit. It was that bad.
Yeah, it really was. Well, when you get done, and the kicker was I didn't finish the race the last 6 miles. I'd say the last 5 miles like I wanted to, just because of cramp issues. I had both hamstrings were cramping at the top, right up on my glutes, and if I tried to run hard at all, they just seized up on me. So I kind of had this slow gait for the last little bit. And so then when you get done, everything starts to set in. I'm trying to pound fluids and, salt tablets and anything I can. And it's just slowly creeping worse and worse. And then trying to get down dugout steps, it was really difficult. But we made it through it.
And you had a horrid weather day too, right?
Yeah, but, surprisingly enough, like we had this call for rain, and it rained all morning from the moment, I left the hotel to go get on the bus to get out there. It was raining on the whole drive out. It was raining while we were there, waiting to go. We were in the gymnasium out by the starting line. And then as we got down towards the start, it actually opened up a little, because I didn't start right when, like you get all the pros go off and the people who are actually going to win the race go off.
Right.
So I kind of actually hit this pocket window where it was, excuse me, pocket window where, I had nice, decent overcast weather. Like I didn't want something really hot. Mm-hmm. At times I had a light drizzle. At times it rained a little bit on us, but kind of felt nice. You're running for that long to have a warm shower to run through.
Nice. Well, you finished in 4 hours, 42 minutes, and 11 seconds. I mean, that's a really great time. If I finish with that, I'm kind of in that neighborhood right now. I'm projecting to that, but that's a really great time for your first time marathon. So congratulations on that.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted better. 4:30 or under was my goal, and I came up a little short. So that's why there's also that little guy standing on my shoulder going, "Would you like to do this one more time, Ryan? Better that time?" And I'm kind of like, yeah.
There's plenty of time. So I kind of want to get into the whole process of how you ended up in the Boston Marathon, but I think one of the things people may not realize is that you were the starting pitcher for the Boston Red Sox the day of the 2013 bombing. Was that kind of the impetus for some of this, or?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think had that not all happened, I don't know where that season would have went in 2013. I would like to still believe we won the World Series, but
Yeah.
um, it really was an emotional day in my mind. Like I remember the start, and first of all, it started with a text message from one of our clubhouse guys saying, "Hey, remember it's an early start. We start the game at like 11:30 on Patriots Day."
Yeah.
And I'd never started a game at that time, not since like the Gulf Coast League when I was 18 years old and down in extended spring training, and I started that early in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, I got to get over there. So I get over there, start the game, have a good game. We play Tampa Bay. We're on the bus after the game. Um, Going to the airport. It's getaway day. We just beat Tampa Bay. David Price was texting Big Poppy about pimping home runs off of him, and it didn't look very good. And they're arguing. And we always had this police motorcade, like 12 officers on motorcycles, kind of getting through town. Because, after a Sox game and on these three big buses and the Red Sox are leaving, they kind of moved us through traffic. And we pulled
Yeah.
up to a light, and all of a sudden they just went, whoop, 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 gone. And
Oh,
everybody
they all
was like,
left
what just
you.
happened? Yeah, and like you got to remember, this is 2013, so like Twitter was just sort of taken off
Right.
as far as media accessibility, and then you also had like what was the real media. So Will Middlebrooks was a young player on our team, and he's like, "There's a bombing downtown," and then it's like, "There's a bombing at the Prudential Center," and then there's a bombing at the Marathon. Like all these different tweets were coming in, and we're like, "Is the town getting bombed right now?" Like we didn't know. We're on a Greyhound bus, and we're looking out windows and trying to find what's going on, and they
Wow.
got us to the airport. We were getting ready to get on the plane. They were loading bags like crazy. And my wife was at the airport. My wife now, at the time we were, she's my girlfriend, and she was flying to Chicago, and she's back home. And she's like, "What do I do?" I said, "I know that they're getting us out of town. So I don't think this is an air threat. This is a ground threat. If they're
Mm-hmm.
going to let you go, go." And then we got on a plane and we got out. And we still didn't know what was happening because now you're on a plane,
Yeah.
and the pilots don't know much. And so we got to a point where we landed in Cleveland and kind of figured out everything that was happening, and then kind of just the rest of the season just playing out. But that day, as my even just my own self, just sitting there like on the airplane, and like, did I just start the last game of the year for the Red Sox? Like,
Yeah.
was that the last game of our season? And what's it going to look like when we get back there? We don't know what's going on. So, yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
a crazy emotional roller coaster of unknowns and
Right.
fear and all kinds of stuff.
And it did. I mean, obviously, didn't really just end there because obviously you guys did win the World Series that year, and I think even as evidenced by you ran it this year, and then Brock Holt also ran it with you.
Yeah.
It's still a part of obviously it's still part of Boston Marathon, but also people who were just Boston Red Sox that year. It seems like.
Yeah, for sure. Because that moment is as much tragedy as there was. We eventually, throughout the season,
Yeah.
used it as motivation and turned it into triumph, and helped families for a moment that'll never heal from that.
Mm-hmm.
Just for a moment, have some smiles on their face or appreciation throughout the season. The amount of people that were involved in the bombing, people who lost legs in the bombing, and people who lost family members were part of our team. They were throwing out first pitches and coming back on a regular basis. And the Boston Strong stuff with Johnny Gomes at second base, flexing after the big base hit, and all these different
Right.
moments that took place. It was more than just a season for us. It was a connection with the city like nothing I'd ever kind of experienced. I think, all of our backs against the wall, everybody hiding inside. And then so when that happened and then you're done and you win a world Series, as time goes on, I'd always had this in the back of my head thing of I wanted to run a marathon. And as we got closer to 10 years, I was like, man, I don't know how this works. I got to qualify and all these kind of things. And I wasn't really jonesing about qualifying for a marathon. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Um, and then it kind of took place, and I called the Red Sox and say I would like to run for, somebody that was affected, dearly during that bombing. And that's when Ling Z Luke, her name came up, and the Ling Z Foundation, and just
Mm-hmm.
kind of, just went through that of how we can help, through continuing to keep a name and a legacy alive. She's a really special young girl who, unfortunately, because of, you know, some terrible things that happened that day, lost her life. And so
Yeah.
it was a real humbling experience for me to run in her honor and her name. And then along the way, just, doing that whole experience, running that marathon. I know they're special everywhere. That was something else. You don't run that marathon in Boston without all the people there. So it was
Right.
almost kind of brought it all back together and tied it all back together. And because I'll never forget either of those days. I won't forget, April 15th of 2013. I won't forget that season, and I won't forget the day I ran the marathon. It was all pretty special.
For sure. So, like as you mentioned, you ran for Team Lindsay. Lindsay Lou was a Boston University grad student who did lose her life that day. You helped raise, as part of the team, $110,000 in 2023, which is very cool. So, let's just kind of just talk it. Like you mentioned, it was kind of like a bucket list item for you. I think it's kind of the same for me. I've always watched the Chicago Marathon and wanted to enter it. Ran shorter distances. I've never done the 26 miles, but I always knew that I could do it, and I eventually worked towards that. Like, when did you, like, have you always been a runner, or did you just start post-retirement? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, actually, kind of I was always a runner. Like I ran even all the way back to elementary school. I was in track meets and I would run, 1500-meter and stuff like that. And then in high school, same thing. And then as baseball started really taking off, I valued the importance of running as a starting pitcher, whether that was running poles, from pole to pole in the outfield, or after every start, the day after every start, I would run. Whether that was leave the hotel, usually leave the ballpark. I would go to the ballpark, change into my, get there early, 6-7 hours before the game, throw on shorts and a t-shirt and run. And I pretty much have a route in every major league city from each ballpark of where you could go, whether that's finding an awesome path along the river in Pittsburgh to, running from the stadium down to the pier in San Francisco. One day I ran across the Golden Gate Bridge and back, like just whatever I could do to sweat out. It was a process. It was twofold. One, go through my start the night before mentally, and then B, just all the lactic acid build up in my shoulder and elbow that I was trying to flush. So always a runner. Never really big crazy distances though. Like I think my longest run was probably from my grandparents' home back to my parents' home in my hometown. I think it's like I want to say it's like 12 miles or something like that. Not super far. Did that one day, and so and then when I got done and retired, I never ran. I just kind of took running off. I just was like, okay, I'm good. Started biking a lot and got into biking, and then obviously switched back when I started to try to train for the marathon.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, it doesn't seem like, covering a clubhouse, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of distance runners in there. It's not, obviously, being a pitcher in Major League Baseball is enough of a time commitment. No one's signing up for a 2-hour, 14 or 15-mile run. Am I right in that? Like, did you ever come across any distance runners in your time in the major leagues?
A couple guys. We had a guy with the Marlins, a guy named Jesus Sanchez, who was one of our young starters in the late 90s with us, with kind of the group that we had down there. And he was like, he could run for days. So I actually remember one off season was probably the most I ran, because every spring training we'd run these laps of the field.
Yeah.
And it's not there's no competition, but there's competition. It's like, and here's like, Sanchi's always like passing everybody, right? So he's lapping dudes. And I just said, screw this, I'm going to figure this out. And I went into like high training of like 6 miles. Like I was running 6 miles in like easily like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, no, sorry, 36 minutes. I was doing 6-minute miles, like just cruising 6-minute miles and trying to get my last mile below that. I remember showing up to that spring training and we go that first lap thing. And he's like looking at me because I'm like right behind him, And he's like, "You really gonna run with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go." And I stuck with him the whole time. And he was like, "It was awesome." It was like honestly, like kind of a cool bonding moment between him and I. And
Nice.
Everybody else is like, "What got into Dempster, man? Why is he like now he's keeping up with Sanchez?" So it was just something that but that was the exception, definitely not the norm. Like position players are always like, well, you don't throw the ball to home plate. Why are you running? Or you don't run the ball to home plate. Why are you running? Like, I'm like, I get it, but I want to stay healthy, so I'm going to keep running.
Yeah. That South Florida running had to be something else. I don't understand how people would possibly train for a marathon in Florida, but they do.
You lose a few
pounds. So you enter the 2023 Boston Marathon. how did your training work out? How did it go? Like, did you feel great all the time? Did you love the
Um,
process, hate it, or?
yeah, I loved parts of the process. It was really hard because, like, I had started the training basically almost like right after or right near when my son was born. So that was my fifth kid.
Yeah,
So now I have five kids and dad responsibilities of five kids, and then I have jobs. I do a couple different things.
yeah,
So it's like, to carve out hours in a day to go running, like, hey, hon, I know you got the baby and also our 4-year-old. Oh, and the kids are going to come home from school. Can you just take care of all this while I go run for a few hours?
yeah,
It's kind of a daunting task to find it. So I tried to carve out and I just tried to start to build up. I was always comfortable with 5, 6 miles, like, back to my training days of doing that, where that was just like sweet
mm-hmm.
spot of no problem. I could find time for that anytime. Then it was like the longer ones and building up, and stacking miles, 3, 4 days in a row of doing 7, 8, 9 miles. And then when you start to get into that half marathon stuff, that's when I really started to notice it. I was like, wow, when I start doing 13 a day, 14, it was like, I get pretty sore.
Yeah,
So then I was on the fence. I'm like, what do I do? Because I don't want to hurt myself during training and not do this marathon that I've set in my mind. So I kind of just told myself, I'm not going to run any more than that. And so my cap was the longest run I did one day, I did 16. But other than that, I did two 14-mile runs and one half marathon.
wow. So you never went
And
any higher than that?
no, it was a lot of tens. I wish I did, looking back now after how I felt
Yeah,
towards the end of the race. But that being said, I feel like if I would have tried that training, I would have done the same thing and it would have really set me back.
yeah,
So, yeah, and it was fun. One thing I did that, I'd heard all this stuff about the hills and I'd asked people about the hills in Boston, what are they like? And Heartbreak Hill and all this stuff. So we have a place in Oregon, in
mm-hmm.
Bend, Oregon, and our house is at like 4,000 feet. And when you go into the development, it has this nice, really steady incline that, it takes you, I don't know distance wise, I think it's like zero.4 of a mile from the
Yeah,
bottom to the top. So I would just run and then I'd jog back down. I'd run. I'd do these like 3, 4 days a week and I'd do, anywhere from 8 to 12 hills just over and over.
mm-hmm.
So now and then I'm running the marathon and I get into the hills. I actually was cramping up before the hills a little bit, got a couple bananas in me and some water, and then I started to feel better. And I got to the hills and I crushed the hills. Everybody. Like, nobody passed me on the hill. I passed everybody. It was
Yeah,
just like, because it felt great. Like, A, I was training at a high altitude. B, I was sitting there crushing hills all the time. So these were like running on flat ground. Well, then I got to the top at Boston College, and it was just like, whoa, man, dude, what is going on here? So if I could go back, I'd go a little slower on those hills and save some of that.
that's a good approach to take. I have like Chicago's a pretty flat course, so I have not really concerned myself with too many hills. Like I've run at the Morton Arboretum, which is kind of a nice hilly course. I mean, hopefully that
Yep.
will increase my stamina. But for me, like I kind of relate to that is, you don't want to get hurt. And there's a lot of mileage involved with this. And there's just been a couple times, whether it's I've been feeling sore, just all right, I'll take that day off and rest for the long run. Or obviously we've had a lot of like weather issues here in the Midwest, whether it's the, Canadian wildfire smoke,
Yep.
or just some of this extreme heat. Just haven't been able to get out there. But like once you start doing these like bigger distances, it just kind of blows my mind that you can go out there and yeah, I just ran 16 miles and just go about my day, because there was a time in my life where if I had done 16 miles, I would have been destroyed for the next 3 or 4 days. But
Yeah.
I have family commitments too. I don't have as quite a young kids as you. I have a 7 and 8-year-old, but you can't just lay on the couch all day and say I ran 16 miles and have your wife be okay with that. It's just not going to fly. But the whole time commitment
No,
thing
it's
too is
not.
like going out at, all right, I'm going to set out at 5 a.m. and like, I could watch like Lord of the Rings in the time that I'm going to be away. Like this,
Yeah.
that blows my mind.
No, it is. It's a big time commitment. And I think the discipline of it all, like sometimes, when I felt myself very like kind of religious in how I was going about my routine was when I felt the best. It's when you get sporadic because you're like, oh, I got to get this in. Then you're feeling anxious. Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
don't run like you were supposed to run. And yeah, I think just staying committed to it, almost prehabbing. I was trying to eat the best I could, and
Yeah.
take care of my body the best I could so that I would recover. And it was a tough weekend to do it too, because it was our 10-year reunion of, the world championship team. So now like over half of our team is there, 3/4 of our team.
Yeah.
And these guys are partying it up and having a good time. And I'm like over there with my club soda at dinner, like, hey man, awesome. You guys are having fun again, huh? Right on. Just like the old times. And it was good, like even the night before actually the race, I wouldn't change it for the world because it was amazing. But we all went to the Zach Brown concert.
Mm-hmm.
They were having a charity event at Fenway Park in this little MGM studio there, 5,000 people. So, I'm at the end. I should have been laying down in my bed resting for the race, but it was all part of all of it. And that's why when I crossed the finish line, I got, 12 teammates with their families and wives and kids all sitting up in the stands cheering me on. It was, pretty cool.
Very cool. So you were out late the night before.
Late, yeah, too late.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't going to sleep anyways. It was like, I'm not going to sleep. No chance.
Yeah. So take me through race day. Like it's going to be a little bit of a different experience for me, being a different marathon and kind of different situation. I'm not going to be partying with my World Series teammates, but with Zach Brown Band. But like, take me through the entire day. Like, what were you feeling? What was the experience like?
Yeah, I just remember I woke up, before my alarm went off. I set my alarm pretty early, 6 a.m. We had to be on the bus to go down there. It was 8:30 for our time slot and everything. And I just went down to the hotel, down to the restaurant, just carb loaded. Just try to get as much food in me as I could. I carb loaded the night before, so I just had, tons of good food just to have as much fuel in my body as I could possibly get.
Yeah.
And also, enough that I'm doing it early enough that I'm giving my body enough time to not be lethargic when I started out. And and then got down, and I didn't know anybody on my team. There was no attachment to any team members. This was, kind of everybody running. And so I met them right before we got on the bus. We all got on the bus and then just rode out there, and you just start to feel that, kind of adrenaline, just trying to load up on fluids and that kind of stuff, and talking to people and their stories of why they're running, if they've run before, and people coming from all over, and then you get there, you get dropped off at a high school outside of town, and wow, there's a lot of people. People outside like crazy. We were lucky we had an inside spot to go in the gym and go hang out there and take bathroom breaks when you need them, and then it's like, all right, here comes your time window, and it was really the first. I pitched again in 2017 for the Team Canada World Baseball Classic, but my heart didn't even get up like it did for this. Like it was almost like a playoff start or something. Just that, when it's go time, like, all right, here we go, and now we're all walking out to the starting line together, and you're just rifling down, as they pinion like cattle down the street, and all the people cheering and rooting you on. You got this today, and you got this, and everybody, and you just get up there and it's like, let's go. Like, there's no, like, it's just, it's literally like the rodeo. They just get the bull in the cage, and then they just open it up, and then the next wave goes through, and the next wave. And so then you just get going. And I always remember I got a great piece of advice, and it did help a lot, was start slower than you want. My neighbor, Jason, has run the Chicago Marathon a bunch of times. And he said, just start slow, you'll get there as far as speed, get a good gait going. And I did that, and I felt really comfortable and really smooth for a while. And yeah, so then just got the race going, and you just you're running through neighborhoods, you're running through people's houses. Like, I think that it's one straight shot, basically. They take you out of town, and then you just run back through all these little towns along the way back to downtown. And you just kind of take it all in, and just trying to tell myself, grabbing everybody volunteering, giving you water and Gatorade and bananas and pace and whatever you need, gels. And just, I don't know. I don't think that adrenaline didn't ever wear off. Like that
really?
Feeling I had in my stomach, I think I pretty much carried it the whole way. And so it was a pretty cool morning. Really quiet. You got a lot of people on there just nervous. I get it. You get nervous. You're going to run 26.2 miles that day. So, but also really excited.
So one of the things people have told me is like, it's the closest that I will ever feel to being a professional athlete. That's not true for you, but like you said, it's kind of close. Like you had the same sort of feelings and anxiety and everything rolled up into one, right?
Yeah, well, like if you're any kind of competitive person
Yeah.
at all, if that's cards or pinochle, who know, you're gonna have this little bit of fire that lights in you. Like I'm not beating a time or I'm not beating a person, but you get out there and then you got people all around you and you're trying to run and rub elbows and you're making your way and it is definitely competitive. You know, I got to admit, like I was a little upset that a little bit of that competitiveness I lost in those last 5 miles, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I really just tried to go and flip the perspective of, and this sucks right now. To nope, I'm gonna take this all in. I'm gonna read every sign. I'm gonna look at everything I can. I'm gonna just
Mm-hmm.
take in the energy of all the people because the people in Boston lifted us up. They helped us win a World Series, and they're lifting us up right now. And it was a great way to bond. It was a great way to reflect, the emotions that I went through from happiness to crying to, just appreciation. And so, as much as I lost on, what I thought I'd be in faster, and more time just gave me a little bit more time to reflect on those things. And for that,
Sure.
man, that's pretty cool right there, and I'm pretty grateful for that.
So you kind of touched on it too. Like you don't have anyone necessarily competing against you. Like in your life as a pitcher, every time you competed, there were people trying to hit 400-foot home runs off of you. Were you able to take any of those lessons and apply it, like the mental side of it, to 26.2 miles?
Yeah, I think the reality of pitching is that you only can control uh, three things. You
Mm-hmm.
select a pitch, you find a location at which you want to throw it, and then it's up to you to execute that pitch. And really, it doesn't matter what the umpire says. It doesn't matter what the hitter does. It doesn't matter unless the ball's hit back to you or you got to cover first base. That's
Yeah.
all I can control. And so all the other noise doesn't matter. And so it takes a lot of mental strength to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Each and every pitch that a guy makes an error behind me and I don't get upset behind that. Now, because I'm upset, I'm not 100% committed to this pitch. And now I make a mistake and I give up the home run. But meanwhile, after the game, I'm like, man, if that guy just would have made that play, cool. Maybe if
Yeah.
I just would have been a little bit mentally tougher, I could have just made a better pitch to that next hitter and executed that. And so just kind of going through that process my whole career and really
Mm-hmm.
finding out a lot more about that as I got older really helped me in the race because ultimately, like, our brain is so powerful. Human beings are capable of so many things. I mean, we've heard the stories of people lifting cars and,
Right.
somebody's trapped underneath it, or, they go 5 days out in the woods with no food and find their way back. Like, we are at the core of us, we're capable of a lot of things, like, and so even going through that hamstring, like, part of me, I did a couple of times, I had to stop. And this is
Mm-hmm.
from a guy who doesn't like to, like, ever come off the mound. Like, I just physically
Right.
couldn't do it. And I'd stretch and then I'd be like, all right, and I just fight my way through it because that was my only option. Like, there's no other option than that. And so I definitely drew from those experiences as an athlete, as
Mm-hmm.
somebody who did that, to realize how powerful it is. It's easy to shut it off. It's easy to stop and say I'm done. But at the end of the day,
Gotta
you're
keep going.
capable of way more. Yeah. Well, looking back, I probably could have ran harder through those cramping and I probably would have found out a way. I mean, I might have fallen over, but who knows? Maybe I would have found some other euphoric place
Other
that,
gear. Yeah.
kind of gets me through that.
Well, there's no relief pitcher coming for you that day, so nice.
No, not at all. Bunch of people cheering me on, and as you're
Yeah.
just like, almost ready in tears, but that's okay. We got through it.
So you were wearing bib 4646, which I thought was
Yeah.
cool. So I mean, a lot of people must have recognized you and been cheering your name as well.
Yeah, it was great. A lot of Red Sox fans and people out there cheering you on, and you hear your
Mm-hmm.
name. Hey, Dempster, go! We love you, and like, go Red Sox. And it was just like, it was awesome. And nice of the people at the marathon to do that. I never asked for that bib. I think Brock got 12-12, which is his number, and
Yeah.
Chara. I know Chara got 33-33. He ran it. When dominated Zano Chara, of course he did. But I always say he was fresh off the ice. He's still in perfectly good shape to be able to do that. So
Yeah, he's a
yeah,
machine. I mean, and
yes,
for being as tall as he is, I know like I'm 6'3", 6'4". Like I feel like I'm just like a giant out there. I don't know how he felt out there, but I guess he wasn't
yeah.
on skates.
It wasn't
Um,
as hard for him. He had way fewer strides in the race.
that's right. So what advice would you have for a first time marathon runner? Like I'm 40 days out. Like what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I think, the best advice I could have is just like stick to your plan that you have, whatever your plan is, because everybody's experience is different, everybody's body's different, and
Yeah.
at this point you've heard enough from everybody who's giving you advice on what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely would say start a little bit slow, don't
Yeah.
stop, don't walk for a second if you can't. Just keep, even if it's
Okay.
just moving. Like if you feel like it, I feel like the stopping for a sec hurt me more than it helped me. So and just take it in. You know,
Yeah.
make eye contact with people along the way. It's hard to do, but it's a and be proud of yourself. Just getting to the start of the race. I think that's one thing a lot of people wish to do it, to follow through and
Yeah.
to actually know you're starting the race. Be proud of that moment right there. Be proud of that moment when you get past a half marathon. Self reflection in the race is pretty fun because we're not winning it, right? Like I don't know,
Right.
the guys who win the race don't have time to do all that stuff.
Right.
Like they're just too busy floating on air as you watch them. I'm like, are your feet even touching the ground? Like, how do you do this?
Supposedly they spend 80% of their time in the air, which is insane. Which
Yeah,
is
I
like
believe it. It looks like
crazy.
that scene in the movie Elf where they're trying to get the Christmas spirit, and the reindeer are just going, and then finally
Yeah.
James Caan starts to sing, and then they take off. That's what it's like watching those guys run in the league group. You don't even
That's what
notice
it's
their
like.
feet touch the ground.
All right, final question. What is it going to take to get you to run the 2024 Chicago Marathon? Possibly with me. I don't know.
It's funny you say that. Yesterday I was on a long bike ride, and I actually thought to myself, I wonder if Jason would run the marathon with me. I know the answer is yes, and so yeah, I'm on the fence right now. So not a lot,
Okay.
not a lot of convincing. I might just find myself in another marathon at some point.
Okay. Well, I look forward to that, and maybe if you're in, I'll be in. But again, not making any promises. I'll make that judgment maybe on October 9th, October 10th. But
Absolutely. Well, good luck, man. I know you're going to
yeah,
crush it. Good job.
cool. I appreciate you joining us, Ryan, here on the CHGO Marathon Podcast. And again, thanks to our good friend Lorraine for setting this up.
Yeah,
Appreciate you making
she's
time.
the best. You got it.
Thanks, Ryan.